It's been a minute. So how does Kermit Smith get App State to compete in the Sun Belt and back to the NCAA tournament? It's Locked On Sun Belt.
You are Locked On Sun Belt, your daily podcast on the Sun Belt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sun Belt, your teams every day. Today's episode is brought to you by a Mazda. We put that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Kermit Smith from App State Baseball is our seventh coach to join us. We got two more still to go, hoping to get the other five. We have done our best for everybody to hop on the podcast to talk about their upcoming baseball team. We talked to Kermit Smith, how to get pitching to come to App State, right? It's the most scenic ballpark in the Sun Belt, and obviously pitchers are going to have a tough time. He doesn't necessarily agree with that. We talk about what went right and what went wrong in 2025. We also hit on the mental aspect, and he actually had a pretty good answer for that as well. We talk portal, we talk NIL, and we talk getting ready for the 2026 season. He is the head coach of the App State Mountaineers. He is Kermit Smith, and he is Locked On Sunbelt. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. We continue to preview the 2026 Sunbelt baseball season, and we bring in the head coach of the App State Mountaineers. He is Kermit Smith. First thing, Coach, how did Boone deal with this storm? Did he get any of this first storm that hit across the Southeast or most of the nation, as it turns out?
Yeah, it was interesting throughout the week. There was, varying reports on how much we were going to get. And I don't think we got quite as much snow as they said that we were going to get, but we got a little bit of ice, which is, set us back a day or so. But I think our towns handled it really, really well.
All right, so how can we get App State to the top half of the Sun Belt? Because if you're in the top half of the Sun Belt, you're competing for an NCAA tournament berth.
Yeah, well, I think, we've been there 3 of the last 5 years. So I think that, continuing down the road of what I think we've done a good job of over the years that we've been here, and, just continue to stay healthy and, push the envelope on every weekend. We're very upfront with our team about the competitiveness of our league and, our expectations for where we want to be. So, I think a little bit of it's staying the course, a little bit of it's staying healthy, and a little bit of it is, just making sure you get the big play at the right time.
So you have one of the more unique settings in all of, well, not only the Sun Belt, of the nation. It's a picturesque ballpark, but it has a little elevation. And I talked to Skylar Mead about recruiting for his ballpark. Does he go out and get left-handed hitters because you got that short porch in right field? How do you go about recruiting pitchers to App State, because they're going to know they're going to give up something because the ball is going to carry? How do you try to recruit your team to your ballpark?
Yeah, I think that's probably blown a little bit out of proportion. I think guys want to come compete here. I think that, for us, we've got an array of things that we can do from a developmental standpoint. We've got a pitching lab. We've got a great strength and conditioning program. I think our development has shown that it's done a really good job of producing pitchers to move on to the next level over the last few years. I think that some of that kind of speaks for itself, but college baseball you're going to give up something. I think that anytime You're using aluminum bats and, where the strike zones are going with everybody having technology now, I think that, there's going to be a little bit of that. So, I don't know that there's any less or more challenge of, getting good players to come play here than there would be anywhere else. But, our strategy is, as you call it, would just be to get really good people that are really good players, that are really good students that, want to come here and help us get to, where we're trying to get to.
So you can either tell them to keep the pitch down, or the ballpark's going to tell them to keep the pitch down. See, that's what I would stress. You're going to learn on how to throw it low in the zone.
Yeah. I think, you just want each guy to do what their repertoire tells them to do. I think some guys are down, some guys are up, and, some guys are in, some guys are out. So I think it's just really kind of up to, each person's repertoire and what have you. Again, I don't think that the the ballpark is that much different than, some of the other places in our league and across college baseball.
We're talking to Kermit Smith, head coach of the App State Mountaineers. All right, so what went well last year for you guys, and where do you think you need to improve on based on last season? Although it's really not building a program these days. It's something new every year. But what was your assessment of last year, and where would you like to see improvement for this season? We'll go that way.
Yeah, I think there was a period of time there where we were playing probably a little bit over our head, and I think there was a period of time there that we were, losing some games and probably not quite playing as bad as, that the loss might indicate. I think that for us, one of our messages going out and recruiting over the summer was, that we wanted to get like-minded people on the mountain. We wanted to make sure that these guys that are coming here for the right reasons, that they love baseball, that they're very passionate about the game, that they're going to play as hard as they can and leave it all on the field. And, I think that, through that and through those efforts and a lot of transparency on our end, I think that we've got the right guys here. I think that you always learn a little something when somebody kind of pops in that other dugout and, the scoreboard gets turned on for the first time. So, we're excited to see that competitiveness come out. But, we just really wanted to be very competitive in who we were bringing in. We wanted to make sure that they were coming here for the right reasons. And when we pressed them and, held them to a certain standard of how hard we play and how hard we work and the standard that we're going to hold them to, that they weren't going to fold. And I think we've got a lot of like-minded people here right now.
So I know there's all a mental aspect to all of the sports, but some are more physically tolling than others. Although the reason we all like baseball is, professionally it's every day, and it can be, 4 or 5 times a week in college. So how do you assess someone's the mental aspect of the game? Because that's much bigger in baseball than it is in the other sports. Because in football, if you're completing it 65 to 70% of the time, that's what is expected, right? If you're shooting 50% of the time, you're doing pretty well in basketball. Whereas if you get a base hit 30% of the time, you're an all-star. How do you go about assessing, the mental aspect of the game with these young kids and transfers compared to just their physical tools?
Well, I think number one, our athletic director has been very forward thinking on the mental aspect of college athletics. We were the first school in the Sun Belt to have a full-time sports psychologist on staff. And, we're fortunate enough to have 2 now. So that was 8 years ago. We were the first school in the Sun Belt to have a full-time person on staff. And, over the last 24 months, we were able to add a second one. And, I think Dr. Cooper was his name, Jacob Cooper, and he was able to come in and put a lot of things into play in addition to things that, I've been doing this for quite some time. And I think that a lot of the mental game is just relatability to, from coach to player and player to player, is our ability to handle, the storms together. And I think that the more that we're able to do that, whether it's handling a strikeout or handling an 0 for 10 or handling a couple of outings that aren't very good, the more that we have a relationship with each other. And again, not just coach to player, not just player to coach, but player to player. These guys spend a lot of time on buses. They spend a lot of time in dorm rooms together, a lot of time in hotel rooms together. And, they're going to get to talking. And I think the more that, they're speaking with empathy, and the more that they're speaking with, all of the programs that you're going to talk to in our league have high expectations for themselves. So I think that, when you're talking about programs that aspire to be in Omaha and aspire to be in regionals and super regionals and the top half of our league, I think that you're going to be dealing with people that have expectations, right? And so for us, it's taking, making it about our daily work and not making it about those expectations. In our world, kind of back to, what are the things that we want to see out of our team this year? I spoke about, we wanted a passionate locker room. And I think that one of the things that you'll see across college athletics in every sport is when passion becomes emotion. So we talk a lot along those lines. What is the point that we flipped over from being passionate to being emotional? And I think it's very hard to be a very good player emotionally. But correct. You always want to, walk that line. And, I think we forget sometimes too that these kids are 18 to 22 years old and they're kids, right? Like they're playing a kid's game. And we want them to enjoy it. So, as much as we talk about that, like there's always going to be pressures. There's going to be pressures from parents. There's going to be pressures from scouts. There's going to be pressures from coaches. So I think a lot of times as the coach is, we want to be there to support them, and give them kind of guardrails for, how to deal with life. They're going to class. They're, dealing with relationships on campus. They're dealing with relationships at home. And they're trying to play a really complicated game with high expectations and a great league. So, I think that we're sometimes use the analogy of, going bowling and putting up the bumper plates. I think sometimes as a coach, you're that bumper plate, right? Like you're the place that, you want to make these guys feel comfortable in the arena that they're in. Play passionately and enjoy it as much as they can. Be a 6-year-old kid out there on the baseball field and enjoy it with a lot of guys that are working really hard to be really good.
All right, let's take a timeout. We'll come back and continue our conversation with the head coach of App State, Kermit Smith. We talk about the transfer portal, NIL, and who has shined so far in practice leading up to the season. We'll do that after I tell you about FanDuel and TurboTax. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite or riding with the underdog or building one of those last same game parlays, this is the game everyone's been waiting for, some more than others. This is where the prediction turns into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's a perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Continue our conversation with App State's Kermit Smith about his Mountaineers. We talk about the transfer portal, NIL, and who has performed so well in practice as they get ready for the season. Talking to Kermit Smith, head coach of the App State Mountaineers, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day, as we continue to preview the 2026 Sunbelt baseball season. All right, how do you and App State deal with the transfer portal and NIL?
Head on, really. I think that you have no choice but to do that now. I think that from a portal standpoint, I think that it gives you the opportunity late in the season to, assess where your team is and maybe fill some needs with some older players or experienced players or just players that fit the need of, where you might be. I think NIL and revenue share, the new ruling, I think, is fantastic where, there is more flexibility for baseball players to have scholarships. I think that's awesome. We've been behind the times for a really long time on that, just stuck at that 11.7. So I think that, first and foremost, I think you're dealing with the scholarship side of it probably before you're dealing with the NIL and revenue side of it. Because I think as each team continues their evolution towards hopefully all of us becoming 34 full scholarships, it's just a constant, ebb and flow of making a roster, right? Like, so you've got 34 guys that you can have in that locker room, and how are you taking the funds that you've been given and break it up to be that. So, I don't think it's just NIL. I don't think it's just revenue share. I don't think it's just scholarship. It's a combination of all of them. So all of those things, it's our job come, middle to late August every year to have a competitive talent base within our locker room, right? And then, from that point forward, it's up to the coaches and the leaders of the program to, make it a cohesive unit and a good culture and a good baseball program. So I think that, where the portal and the NIL and revenue share has taken us is, I think you're seeing a kind of a scatter over the summer, we're still always going to recruit high school kids and, bring in players that we feel like fit our program and fit the way that we do it. But then as you assess throughout the year, your own roster, going into the summer, you got 300 teams dealing with, 3,500 players that go in every year. So, which ones of those players fit the needs of that program? And, do they fit at App State? And that's kind of up to us to deal with, but head on, it's there, it's never going away. And, hopefully some things happen over the course of the next few years to, put some parameters on it, maybe, a one-time transfer rule instead of a multi-time transfer rule. And, maybe some, a little bit more transparency on how much revenue share and NIL teams and players are getting from each roster. I think that would ultimately help college athletics.
How does it differ from recruiting a high school kid to recruiting someone in the transfer portal?
Well, right now, I think the high school kid's not feeling a whole lot of love. I think that, from a standpoint of, college baseball getting a little bit older, I think they're sitting back and saying, dang, I've done everything that's been asked of me. I've lifted weights, I've trained, I've eaten right, I've, put up numbers in high school. I've played on the best travel team. I've gone to the best tournaments and go to these showcases. I've really done everything. I've done recruiting 101 perfectly, and I'm not finding, the offers that I want. So, for us is, making sure that we're still very aggressive on those guys that fit us, what fits App State. And, if we do find those guys, then just being really aggressive to try and make that happen. So, that's kind of how we're approaching the high school kid.
It feels like it's almost a little bit easier to do the high school kid compared to the transfer portal where, let's just say it may come down to dollars.
To a certain degree. Yeah. I think you have to find the right guy out of the portal to come in and fit, again, who you are. And yeah, part of that is financially, how does that fit with who you are?
Talking to Kermit Smith, App State Mountaineers head baseball coach, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. All right, who are some of the guys that you've been impressed with, 2 weeks into practice and just about 2 weeks left to go before opening day? That is incredible how fast. We're going to blink, coach, and it's going to be conference play. You haven't even started yet. You're going to blink, and you're going to be in the Sunbelt play come March 1st.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think that you have two ways to look at that. I think you have the guys that impressed you from a standpoint of improvement from last year. And I think you have the other standpoint of guys that are new that have impressed you, both from the areas that we just talked about, from a portal class, a junior college class, or your high school class. And I think there's a mixture of those, Joseph Zamora, who's been kind of a mainstay at second base for us the last few years. It's crazy to think of, he's kind of put together kind of an all-conference type resume both years that he's been here. And, for somebody like that to impress you, I think that, says that he went out and worked really, really hard at what he did. Got back here a little early in January, and you can just tell he's really invested in his body. He was a little banged up last year, and it's been good to see him just kind of, continue to put the work in. We've got a returning pitcher named Jordan Fisher, who, he's had his spurts over the last few years of pitching some big conference innings, and been a little banged up really all three of his years. And, just done a lot of really good stuff to get healthy, and I'm liking what's kind of coming out of his hand. He's doing a really good job. We got a transfer from UMass Lowell, Nick DiRito, just really been just all about the work since he's been here. I just see him maybe feeling like he could fill a lot of different roles for us. Got a junior college kid named Gage Peterson who's throwing the baseball really, really well. Really, really pleased with him. Got a freshman named Nico Soul, outfielder, left-handed hitter. He had a really good fall. Returning outfielder named Riley Luft, who I thought went out and just put a lot of work in over the summer and over Christmas, and I think he's put himself in a really good spot. We got a junior college left-hander, Tanner Nolan, that's done some really good things for us. So, Dave, I feel like I could really just talk about my whole roster. We got a bunch of guys that I really like that they work really hard and they want to be good, and they put a lot of time, effort, and work in to be really good. And I could probably tell you something that I like, either personality, work ethic, leadership, or skill wise of just about our whole roster, that I'm just fortunate to be these guys' coach right now.
Well, you did a pretty good job naming about half the roster off the top of your head. That's in the day of the portal. That's pretty good. Let's take one more time out. We'll come back and wrap up our conversation with App State's Kermit Smith. We talk about preparing for Sun Belt Conference play, how he goes about scheduling, and the challenge/fun it is to be in the Sun Belt, knowing you don't have to play great at the end of the season on one weekend to make the NCAA tournament. There is that opportunity for all of the teams. We'll do that after I tell you about Mazda and the Everydayer Club. This is Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. And we got to talk about the ULM Warhawks on a 13-game losing streak, 0-11 in conference play, picking up their first win against Old Dominion, and they did not make it easy, having an 11-point lead with 3 minutes to go, about 3.5, and making it a 2-point game in a minute and a half later. And yet they do hang on for an 85-79 victory over ODU. ULM picks up their first victory in the Sun Belt this season. These remind us of what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and I never quit. We put the same passion in every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. And the Everydayer Club. Thank you for making Locked On Sunbelt your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live Sunbelt sports every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Sunbelt with no interruptions, all for just $5 a month, or even better, $50 a year. Go to LockedOnSunbelt.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Let's wrap up our conversation with App State's Kermit Smith. He talks about getting ready for Sunbelt Conference play, how he goes about scheduling, and that challenge and fun, knowing that you can make the NCAA tournament from the Sunbelt without having to win the conference tournament. He is the head coach of the App State Mountaineers. He's Kermit Smith, and he is Locked On Sunbelt. He is the head coach of the App State Mountaineers. He's Kermit Smith. So how do you use the pre-conference schedule? Is the lineup set? Are we raring to go? Are we still trying to figure things out? Is that a year-to-year basis? Because I know they all count, and obviously there's some, out-of-conference opportunities to get a good RPI and get some good wins in there before the conference season starts. But obviously the goal is to, put yourself into that position to win the conference, either regular season or Sunbelt tournament, to get that berth to Omaha. So how do you use the out-of-conference schedule to get ready for the conference schedule?
Well, for us, the most important game on the schedule is the next game on the schedule. So we're gonna write the lineup out. We're gonna make a pitching change. We're gonna do everything to win that game. So for us, I guess I don't necessarily look at it as getting ready for conference. I look at it as like what we're doing right this second is getting ready for our season. So for us, next team that we'll play is the most important game in the history of the program. So we're going out to give our best effort to be prepared to win that game. And, all of the things that we learned through that, you asked a question earlier in the podcast here about, the mental game of baseball. And I think that, what each game and what each segment of the season allows you to do is continue to work through that. Right. And you're going to have a guy that is not very good in, February, that's going to be really, really good in May. And that journey of how to get from here to there and vice versa. For me, that's the mental game. So, somebody's going to be in our starting lineup, in 2 weeks that's not in our starting lineup in May. And somebody's going to pitch a lot for us in the month of February that's not going to pitch a lot for us, and vice versa. There's going to be a guy that pitches a lot for us down the stretch. So I think you're always determining that, but, it gives kind of, I guess, back to those guardrails that we talked about earlier, the bumper plates. It gives us an opportunity to start and continue the evolution of insulating our baseball program so that these guys know that, we're in support of them, and that we're right there with them, right? We're all in that dugout together. We're all in the trenches together. But yes, the conference is a very important part of the segment of the schedule and the season. But we honestly don't look at it any different than, the next game on the schedule.
How do you go? What's your theory behind scheduling? Do you try and get as many high RPI games as you can and win as many as you can? A couple of years ago, I used this example. Matt Deggs did not have the toughest of all schedules. He set himself up to win 45 games for the Cajuns, and that's what they did. So what's your theory? And I talked to another coach. We need to start playing more games on the road because we get the higher wins on the road are more important than wins at home. So what's Kermit Smith's theory behind scheduling?
Yeah, it's a little bit of ebb and flow. If you were to walk into our office right now, there's 3 years of schedules pinned to the board. So, you're constantly looking at, where are you opening up? When are you on the road? Who do you have midweek? Some of those rhythms that you get into that, we're very fortunate to be in a great RPI region. So, we can go within an hour and a half of us and, play a number of good RPI teams. And so I think you're consistently balancing out the home and away of that. In other words, if we're traveling to Louisiana, as you referenced earlier, on a Thursday through Sunday, the next Tuesday, let's make sure that, we're at home on that Tuesday, and, where are we going on the next weekend? You're looking at your conference schedule when it's released and finding out how many flight trips you have. And then you're kind of backtracking that to, the first 4 weekends of the year. And, let's make sure that we're, have a balance of home and away there. We're fortunate to have a minor league field in Hickory, North Carolina that allows us to play some of our home games early down there. And that's appealing to some teams that want to come in and, play good competition and, play a Sun Belt Conference opponent. So that gives us some flexibility there. So honestly, I guess the method behind the madness for us is just balance. We want to have balance to making sure our guys are, not getting back at 4:00 in the morning every Monday morning. We want to make sure that there's balance to, if we do have a late night from a Thursday into a Sunday on travel, that Tuesday that we're taking it easy on them, and we've got a home game or a closer opponent. And yes, we always want to play, a really good schedule to put us in a position to have a chance at large at the end of the year.
Yeah, because that's what would make the Sun Belt baseball so special. You don't have to win the conference championship to make the NCAA tournament. Sun Belt baseball and softball are the two sports that can compete nationally, as we saw last year with Coastal Carolina actually playing for the national championship. And so I don't want to say pressure. I'm going to say fun. How much more fun is it? Because, there's not that. I can be good all year, and I don't have to just be good on that weekend, right? If Troy is not good in Pensacola, they may not make the college basketball. They probably won't make the college basketball tournament. Whereas if you're good all year and have a bad weekend in Montgomery, you could still make the NCAAs. Does that make it much more fun? Does it put the pressure on you to be good all year long? How do you see all that? Because that does present an opportunity for the Sun Belt baseball and softball teams that the other sports don't have.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. I think that it it should make it fun. I think that
The
reason that you come do this is, to play against the best teams in the country and have a chance to, move on at the end of the season and to postseason competition and get in the tournament. So, I think those are all of the reasons that I think that you should be excited to come to App State and have a chance to compete in one of the best conferences in the country.
Yeah, he's Kermit Smith. He is the head coach of App State baseball. How long have you been doing this? And I've had other coaches been doing this a long time. And, can you teach an old dog new tricks? That was another coach's saying. I certainly didn't say that. But it has got to be a little bit frustrating because it seems to not be changing on an annual basis. It seems to be changing on a daily basis on who's eligible. Coach, you're going to be able to go get – it's not going to be very long. You're going to go get a minor league baseball player that didn't make it to the big leagues. That's going to happen here in the next year or two.
Yeah. I've been really fortunate to do this for 26 years, the last 10 here at App State. I think that anytime that rules are fluctuating like they are, I think that it gives the opportunity for lack of stability. I think that I'm very fortunate to work at a university that, it has the pedigree that we do and has the foundation for who we are and who we want to be. And I think that whenever that foundation is rooted in, the student athlete first, and the development of them, not only as a baseball player, but as a student and as a person and a human being and a future husband and father and community leader. I think that when you're founded in that, the purpose goes much deeper than just winning, which again, I'm not making winning light because I want to do a lot of it. But I think that when the foundation is in, influencing and mentoring our youth, that's something that at least our coaching staff and our administration is very passionate about. So I think that anytime that you're rooted in that and that's your foundation, the rules can change, but the mission remains the same.
He's the head coach of the App State Mountaineers. He's Kermit Smith. Really appreciate your time, Coach, taking it from home. Even more impressive because there's not a whole lot of family time coming up with the season just around the corner. Thank you so much. Best of luck this season to the Mountaineers, and hopefully we'll catch up sometime during the year. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Dave. Appreciate what you do for our league.